We are too. Well, hi, Paula. Welcome to the sisterhood.
Thank you. I feel like I'm meeting my two new sisters for the first time. It's great to be
Absolutely.
part of
You
the
are.
sisterhood. It's great to be here, ladies. Thank you.
Well, it's so great to have you. And we are just excited to jump into your story. So, Paula, tell us a little bit about even where you grew up and how you ended up going into TV.
Yeah, for sure. I grew up in Michigan, a small town in Michigan, born and raised. And I can still consider myself a Midwesterner, even though my husband and I moved to the East Coast about 9 years ago. So born and raised in Michigan and went to a small school in Ohio for college, Cedarville University. I
Oh,
actually
yeah.
married. You've heard of Cedarville?
Well,
Okay.
my husband looked you up. Okay, this is so funny. My husband looked you up, and we know a number of people in Denver that are probably in your graduating era, but we can talk about them
Yeah.
later.
Oh,
That maybe we know people in
amazing.
common because of
I'm
Cedarville.
sure. Well, it was a small college. So
Yeah.
graduated in 97 from college
Mhm.
and went into broadcast journalism. But I didn't like grow up thinking I wanted to be on TV or to be a broadcaster. Like it didn't even cross my mind. I was a high school drama teacher, Mr. Barsoon, who's the first one that really kind of channeled my talents and gifts of like curiosity and question asking and narrating. He knew I could narrate because I was in the drama program, and he knew I was just inherently curious about life. He's like, you should go into broadcasting. So that's literally the first time I thought about it. But anyway, subsequently, I go into broadcasting. And it's about 3-4 years out of college that I finally decide to pursue on air, because for so long I was content, you know, I was content being behind the camera, producing, shooting, editing, writing, but I didn't want to be in front of the camera because I was so scared of failure. And, fear can paralyze us from a myriad of things. And so fear paralyzed me. But eventually it was right around 9/11. That's when I finally decided to push into that fear, because I had that secret desire to be on air, but I just didn't think I could do it. I was scared of what people would think of me, and I said, I probably don't know what am I going to, what if I don't have anything to say? So I finally pressed into that fear, and I worked in small markets in Dayton, Ohio, then Cincinnati, Chicago, and then about 9 years ago, my husband and I got the call to go to New York to work for the network. So I started out as the overnight news anchor at ABC News. I didn't even know they had an overnight news, but they do.
Yeah.
And it's very fun. And so I'd go in around 9 o'clock at night, come home around 9 in the morning. And then I just kind of moved up pretty quickly. I was promoted a year after that. And then the next year I was promoted to the weekend anchor of Good Morning America. And then I was promoted again to The View. So it all happened pretty quickly, with ABC. But I've been in broadcasting for 20 something years. So it's, been working your way up. And TV, I like to say, like, the pinnacle is the network level, similar to coaching. The pinnacle would be the NFL. So it's been pretty great to reach the top in broadcasting, but then I burned out. So God has had other things for me. So that's what we're going to talk about today, when God has other plans for us.
Yeah. So that does sound like it was a pretty rapid fire progression, and that's intense work. It's not just, oh yeah, I have to go to work today. Like your whole life revolves around your schedule and preparing.
100%. Yeah. And there's not really a schedule. So you're always, in many ways, you're on call. It's similar to that of a doctor, although we're not saving anybody's lives. I don't want to draw an unnecessary parallel there, but yeah, we are on call. You have to be ready to go at a moment's notice to be able to travel. And so it's a different lifestyle for sure. Very different lifestyle. But it's been an interesting ride. It really has.
So I want to go back, first of all, to that moment around 9/11 when you decided to pivot and go from behind the camera to in front of the camera. How did you exercise your voice in that moment to step out into that? I mean, what did that look like a little more practically, and give us some insight there?
I was scared. I think when we look back at touch points in our lives, sometimes people have to see the dream for you before you see it for yourself. And many times you're not seeing it because you're scared. So for so long, I think I had like this secret desire to be on air, but I didn't really want to articulate that because I was scared of failure. And so I was content. I was just content in my little position back here, producing, editing, you know, doing it, which is all very rewarding work. And I'm not diminishing that at all. But I really felt that there were so many people speaking into this particular area where like, you need to be on camera, you're comfortable on camera. You know, this is where, you know, you have talents and gifts in this particular area. But it wasn't until 9/11 where I said, okay, the dream that everybody had for me, I finally had it for myself. I was gripped by the coverage of 9/11 and just the ability to tell this sensitive, tragic story was so compelling to me. And I finally felt that. I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to step into my fear. Finally, this fear has been paralyzing me forever. And I felt God say, as he told, you know, in Joshua 1, and he's asking Joshua to take down the city of Jericho. And he says, in the same way as with Moses, I'll be with you. Have I not commanded you to be strong and courageous? And so I really felt in that moment, like, okay, God, you're vocationally calling me to this area. You're going to equip me the same way you're with Moses. You're going to be with me. I'm going to press into my fear. But like the reality of the situation was, I was working in radio sales at the time, 25 years old, making a killing. And I walked away from that. Mm-hmm. So just to make ends meet, I was substitute teaching. I'm not a teacher, not a homeschool teacher, not a substitute teacher. I'm just not a teacher. That is not my gifting. My sister's a teacher. God loved teachers because there's a special place in heaven for teachers.
Yeah, I agree.
And the amount of patience that they have. But I knew that God was calling me vocationally into this area. So I had quit my job and I was like, I'm just going to go for it. So I substitute taught to pay the bills. That is, you know, like we weren't making a ton, but I finally got hired at one station in Dayton, Ohio. They decided to take a chance on me, but I was hired to be a production assistant. So I went from making a killing in radio sales to $7 an hour and just worked my way up. And a PA, I was writing scripts. I was, you know, just doing any bit of grunt work. By the way, can I just shout out to my children? I taught her. JJ, wait, come here, children. I told you I'm not a teacher. I'm not a homeschool. Come say hello to my friends. Hi. Okay.
Hi.
And this is my daughter, Caroline, two of my children.
Hi, Caroline.
This is like, they can't hear you because I have earbuds in, but they made coffee for me. This is my crowning achievement from homeschooling.
Right.
I taught the children how to make me coffee. You taught her? Do you want to tell the ladies how to make it? Well, they might have a different coffee machine. They might have a different coffee machine. Sorry, so I'm trying to teach my kids like real life skills. They're making
right. I love it.
Okay. Yes.
So anyway,
critical. It is critical.
It's critical. The coffee making skill is critical.
I mean, hello. And they take such great. Do you see? He takes such great pride in that. I made this for you, Mom.
So cute.
Okay.
Oh,
I don't even
love
remember
it.
where I was, but yeah. So I got hired.
Well, you were making $7 an hour. That's where you were.
I was. Yep. Making a killing.
Yeah.
$7 an hour. And but because I knew how to shoot and edit and produce and write, on my downtime I borrowed the camera equipment from the sports department. So I shot my own stand-ups, I shot my own interviews, and I put a reel together. And in TV we don't just hand a piece of paper for our resume. We have to hand you a tape so that you can see what our camera presence looks like. You know, are we relatable? Can we articulate? Are we effective communicators? So I handed the news director a tape, a VHS tape, and I said, I know, going way back, I said, just give me some feedback on it. This is, you know, the first tape I've really put together, but you know, I want to eventually report. And you know, when he was hiring me in my introductory interview, I had expressed my desire to report down the line. And he said, oh, well, you're never going to report here. And I understood that Dayton, Ohio is a pretty substantial size market. You don't just start on air there. But I handed him my tape after I'd been there for like 6 months or so, and he liked it. He gave me some great feedback, and he asked me to make another tape. And before you knew it, he put me on the air. But I would be like on air, one show, the next one I'd be running the teleprompter, you know, still doing the grunt work in between. So, but he gave me my big break. And then, so I worked in Dayton, and then I worked in Cincinnati for a couple of years, and then moved to Chicago and then New York. So you just kind of work your way up, zigzagging across the country from one place to the next.
But you really did. Well, it sounds like your husband, bless him, moved willingly, which is awesome.
But also very countercultural, very in our Christian world, it's very countercultural. So like it takes a strong man to support a strong woman. And you think about the sacrifices that he's made, not just for our family, but as a man, I've been really, any moment I can, I just want to shout from the mountaintops. He has sacrificed a ton, and it's been incredible to see how God has rewarded him for his ability to lead this family through sacrifice, through personal sacrifice. But that's very countercultural in the Christian community. Like the man doesn't follow the woman, and it's not that he was following me. He was pressing into it. He was pushing me into this and encouraging me. And he was my biggest cheerleader along the way. He has been. So shout out to my husband.
Love it. What's his name?
John.
Johnny. Go John.
I know.
That's so awesome. I love stories of strong men like that who can
he's incredible.
allow their spouse to really use her voice to its full volume. I love that so much. But it sounds like you really put yourself out there too, which is hard to do. And it's hard, for you to hand him that VHS tape. I mean, that was a defining moment for you, I imagine.
Yeah, but I felt like I was still scared. And I think that's a fallacy, is that when God vocationally calls us to a particular area, or he leads us to a particular area, that we're not going to be scared about it, that we somehow conquer fear, that we're healed of our fear. I was so scared, and I was still scared of the rejection, but I knew that God was in it. I had a peace in my spirit that God was in it. And so I just went for it. And I think that's the great differentiator. Do you have a peace in your spirit? Is follow the peace. And that's what when I was stepping away, a couple of years ago, when I knew God was calling me out of broadcasting, even though at the height of my career, I had a peace in my spirit, even though it was crazy to everybody else. And it seemed crazy to me. And I was scared. I still had that peace. So fear can paralyze you, but I always say follow the peace, and expect God to show up, and he does. So I threw it on God. I said, God, you promised me that if I stepped into this space that you were going to meet me. You said, have I not commanded you? You're telling me to be strong and courageous. You're telling me not to be discouraged and not to be afraid. So I'm gonna go there. I'm gonna take that step. But then what does he promise? In the same way as with Moses, I'll be with you. But have I not commanded you? Be strong, be courageous. And the Lord your God will be with you everywhere you go. So I just put it on him. I was like, you got to show up. I'm going here. You got to show up. And he always has. But that's where trust comes in. You have to take that step. You can't see the rest of the staircase, and it's scary to put yourself out there. But when God's in it, I mean, when he vocationally calls you to a particular area or leads you, he's going to equip you. But you have to take that first step. It's up to you.
Yeah. So it's not so dependent on the results, because no matter what, he is with you. So it takes some of that tension of fear of failure maybe away. The fear of rejection could still be there, but you know that he's with you in it.
Absolutely. And failure, yeah. And just, I think failure too, like, turning failure on its head. Is it really failure if you learn something from it? Like, I've learned more through my failures than my successes. And who's to determine what a success is? And it just goes back to this, like, you're more than what you do. You're not just, your value isn't just vocation. Your worth isn't just work. So like stripping all that back to the very bones of it, realizing I'm more than what I do. Like I know who I am outside of what I do now. And then that kind of releases you from any of those pressures that you were just talking about, Alex.
It does. So you go to New York, you get promoted, you're on The View. The View is a show based on everybody having a certain voice, a certain position. How did you go from back in Dayton to being in a place where you really had to have a very distinct voice, on a show. How did you develop that? And how did you decide, okay, this is who I'm going to be on this show. This is what I'm going to represent. This is going to be the voice that I use.
Right. Well, I think just inherently you look, it all goes back to like, what are our inherent gifts and talents and curiosities? And my nickname growing up was Paula 20 Questions. I've just been generally curious my entire life. So, and I'm a natural, like I'm the youngest of four. So nature and nurture, I'm a challenger. I like to champion people, but I also love to challenge people. So, when it came time for The View, my biggest struggle on that show was not that I didn't have an opinion, because I definitely had one, but it was the position that I was put in because I was told, because I was doing The View and I was still anchoring Good Morning America weekend. So Saturday and Sunday, I'm a journalist, but that was more important to me than anything else. I didn't want to ruin my credibility. So as a news journalist, you value your objectivity, your ability to stay neutral, to deliver the story and not become the story. And I was given explicit directions because I was still working in news that I couldn't give political opinions. And when I was asked to do The View, it was before Donald Trump was president. Like it was 2015. So like we were just barely into like primary season at that point. So, I was told you can't give political opinions, but you could talk about everything else. So when I started the show, it was more pop culture, what are we talking, what's trending today, that sort of thing, much more comfortable for me. And I will give my opinion about just everything, faith, food, you name it, family. It doesn't matter. I'll go there. But then things became really political and it became increasingly more and more uncomfortable for me because I couldn't give a political opinion and it was becoming a more political show. And so I felt like I was walking this fine line of pleasing, two masters, and I don't want to compromise my news career, but also feeling like a failure because you can't go there because View co-hosts are expected to have, to be fiercely opinionated, which I have opinions, but when I'm told I can't give it in a particular avenue, a particular area, it was really difficult. So that was hard for me, knowing that when I was presenting a different voice, it couldn't always be mine. But I still, because I love to champion and challenge people, I would want to bring a different perspective to the show just because. But it was a struggle, and I do feel in many respects like I did fail the viewers in some regards because I couldn't go there and I couldn't advocate as fiercely as I wanted to on certain political issues because there was a conflict, there was a big conflict of interest, so that was tough. But I had a great experience and I love my co-host, and I think for me the most important lesson that I learned wasn't anything that happened on air. It was off air, and just building those relationships and learning how to see people for people and not people as policy, not people as ideology. Learning to see people like Joy Behar and Whoopi Goldberg. Yes, they are icons, but to see them as people and not just, oh, she believes this and she believes that, but to genuinely say, I love you and I respect you. We don't have a ton in common, but I love you and respect you. You're made in the image of God. And that's all I need to know. We can argue, we can disagree without being disagreeable. And at the end of it, I can still see you as a human. I can still see you as a person. I don't just see your ideology. I see you as a human. I see you as somebody that was created in the image of God. So that's my biggest takeaway from doing that show, was learning that, because I wasn't able to do that before the show.
So talk to us about that burnout season in your life, and talk to us about what that felt like, because I think even a lot of people, they feel tired, but how do you know the difference between tired and burnout?
Yeah, I mean, I think burnout can look like different things to different people. Some people burn out and hate their job. I didn't hate my job. In fact, I was addicted to it. That was my narcotic of choice, was the high of achievement, the high of accomplishment, but it was to the detriment of my family. And I felt like, I said, God, you called me to do this. This is the thing that I was born to do, right? This is why I'm here, to be a broadcaster. But if so, why is everybody getting my leftovers? Why are the things that I have professed to be my corest of values, my family, my faith, why are the choices that I'm making clashing so severely with my core values? And so I think, I mean, like I said, burnout can look like a myriad of different things, but for me, I just didn't have, I had a sense in my spirit that things were off. So that's where it started. I had an unease with where I was. I just couldn't justify that a God who created me to do this uniquely would also ask me to sacrifice my relationships with my husband and children. I wasn't going to church. My health was suffering. When things are off. And for me, it all started with my spirit. And then you would think that a wise person would just look at that and that would be enough. I haven't seen my husband in years. We haven't gone on a date in years. My kids are like, we're growing more and more disconnected. My health's suffering. I don't go to church. Oh, but I profess to be this person, I profess to be this, one person, but I'm living a different life, both with the choices that I'm making professionally and personally. And, but that wasn't enough for me because I was so addicted to work. And it wasn't until God allowed a personal crisis, which I write about in the book, My Season of Hell, where I went through, like, within 7 months, I had a miscarriage. With an emergency surgery, I had a concussion, a head-on car crash, influenza, and pneumonia. And I said, all right, God,
gosh.
like, I knew that he was trying to get me to slow down because of that unease in my spirit, but I was too scared. Once again, fear crops its ugly head. Fear, which paralyzed me from even getting into broadcasting, is rearing its ugly head, and it's telling me, oh, if you step away at the height of your career, people are going to think you're nuts. They're going to think you couldn't handle it. They're going to think that you're a failure. You couldn't hack it. And so it's like, oh my gosh, they're right. So then I burrowed in deeper, and then I go through this season of hell, and I was like, all right, God's like, if you don't slow down, I'm going to get you to slow down. And God really slowed me down. And that's when I decided.
Yeah, you hit someone physically. I mean, if it almost took that physical, where you literally couldn't get up.
No, I mean, that's exactly right. And so God forced me to slow down. And then where I write most of the book is in that space where after I walked away and I'm suddenly hit with the fact that I don't know who I am anymore outside of it. That my identity and purpose were so wrapped up in doing and in this title, in career and work and job, and I think in this moment we can look around at, wow, have I misplaced my significance because I feel so off right now? And when we misplace our significance, mine was work, but whatever that may be, when we misplace our significance in the wrong things, then we're hit with a personal crisis like the one I went through, or we're hit with a pandemic like the one we're all going through, and it throws us off. So that's the importance of finding a purpose and finding calling that don't shift and shake when the times do. Because if you attach yourself to something that does move, then your identity is going to be rocked. Your purpose is going to be rocked. And you're not going to know who you are outside of what you do.
I imagine that moment of you turning in your resignation was a moment that felt like free falling. Would you describe it that way?
Yeah, it was like terror and joy. It was, I was on some hands, there was relief because finally I can get my life back. And then this fear, did I just throw everything away? Because remember when I was first toying with the idea of it and talking with some of my colleagues, and they're like, you're insane. Why would you're at the height of your career. Why would you step back? Like, the sky's the limit for you. And I even had an executive tell me that I was crazy. So yeah, it was trying to reconcile those two emotions, but I had a peace about it. So again, you can be peaceful about it. You can have a peace in your spirit and still be really scared. And I was scared. I was scared of what I was walking away from, and then scared of what I was walking into, because it's not like the next chapter was written and God's like, I have this, and this plan for you. And
right.
No, that's not how it works. That's not how it works. It's stepping out, taking that first step when you can't see the rest of the staircase. And sometimes you can barely see that stair that you're on. And that's where I felt. And I even feel that God is really like just showing me, he's released me from the lie that my worth isn't doing, but then he's given me the permission to, now that I know I'm so much, my worth isn't just work, and my value is not vocation, and calling isn't so one dimensional. It's not just career. He's now given me the permission to see myself outside of that, to branch out and to do different things, but it's all rooted in knowing who I am outside of what I do. It's very freeing. Very freeing.
I would think so. And okay, I do want to walk into a little bit of this journey that you went on after that moment. And that is just this journey of identity and really finding a new voice, like, what does that look like for you to really go into that process?
I think just, it's been really humbling to see this new chapter kind of unfold. It's nothing that I still, God's still writing it and still scripting it, but just to be able to walk, to be able to stare your fear down and face it and walk into it and take that step of faith. And just living in that moment where you're trusting God to show up. Like, God, you need to show up, because I know you're in it. I know that you're leading our family in this direction. But I'm just trusting for you to show up. I'm trusting for the unbelievable, and just living day by day in that faith listen, I for so long thought, ladies, and I don't know how you've contextualized your careers along the way, but I thought I was going to be this one thing for the rest of my life. I thought that God created me to be a broadcaster. That was my purpose. That's how I introduced myself. I'm Paula Faris. I'm a, anchor at Good Morning America. I'm co-host at The View. That's who I thought I was. And then when that shifted and I realized I didn't know who I was outside of it, God showed me what my worth was, that my worth doesn't lie in doing, but then he just gave me the permission to look at the talents, gifts that he gave me, to look at the talents and gifts that he's given you, and to see myself multidimensionally. I'm curious. I ask questions. I'm an effective communicator. I challenge people. I champion people. Why did I ever think that God could only use that in a broadcasting capacity? It's like, peel back the layers of like, what are your inherent gifts and abilities? And just, I love to ask people this question, that God's calling you vocationally into a particular area when three things happen. What are you good at? What do you love? And what a trusted people notice that you're good at and you love. You have to check all of those boxes. Okay. So it's not enough just to be good at it. It's not enough just to love it. You have to be good at it, love it, and trusted people have to speak life into it. So I've known my inherent curiosities, my inherent gifts. My nickname was Paula 20 Questions, and I had people speaking life into those areas. Like, you're an effective communicator. You are curious. You ask a lot of questions. This is your area. But you peel back those layers and it's just, wow. Like, my husband, he is an incredible leader. He's an incredible motivator. And if he saw himself as one thing for the rest of his life, he would have been a college basketball coach for the rest of his life, but those talents and gifts that God gave him, you look at the way different branches, vocational branches that God has led him to, whether it was captain of his basketball team, whether it was a college basketball coach, whether now he's managing a big commercial real estate firm, all using those gifts of talent those gifts of leadership and motivation. Another friend who's a podcaster and author and counselor, her gifts are listening and encouraging. Those are her talents and gifts. That's what she's really good. She's a gifted listener. She's a gifted encourager. And you look at how God's used those on different branches: counseling, podcasting. She's an author. So often we just back ourselves in this corner, like, I'm this for the rest of my life. But peel those layers back. What are you good at? What do you love? And what a trusted people notice you're good at and you love. And it's not going to be so one dimensional. It's going to be, what are the talents and gifts that you're good at and that you love? So it's really freeing to live in that space. It really is.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about the difference between a vocational calling and a faith calling, and how those two things are different.
Now, ladies, you're women of faith. How often do you hear that word calling thrown around, like ambiguously?
Oh, yeah.
All the time, right?
It's like,
could somebody please give it some context? Right. And also in the faith circles, is it not synonymous with career? Like, we're supposed to find the one thing that we're good at. We're supposed to find this one thing we were born to do. And it's always job work related. It's always doing related. And so when I went through this moment where God called me out, and then I realized I didn't know who I was outside of it, I was like, but I'm just pursuing my calling, God. I feel like God really taught me in that moment that we have two callings on our life. And that's when things really just kind of started making sense for me. He's like, you have a faith calling, or I call in my book, I say faith calling / purpose. Okay, you can use those words interchangeably. And you have a vocational calling. Faith calling never changes. Vocational calling does. Faith calling is why you're here, who you are, why you were created. It is your purpose on this earth. It has nothing to do with career, job, work, and it is to love God and love people. That's my faith calling. That is my purpose. My purpose before, years ago, would have been, I'm Paula Faris, I'm supposed to be the best broadcaster I can be. So you notice when there's an inevitable vocational shift, I don't know my purpose is shaken, because my purpose is so tied to doing. So faith calling and purpose don't shift, don't shake. Vocational calling does. Think about vocation as the vehicle by which you're going to fulfill your purpose or your faith calling. It's the vehicle by which you'll love God and love people. It's just the conduit. So it's not about what you're doing, it's who you're doing it for, it's why you're doing it. And when you see it that way, it's like, okay, God. So that's why when I've mentioned calling in this context, I'm even in our conversation, I'm quick to say, like, God was vocationally calling me here, because God vocationally calls us, but our faith calling is never going to change. Our purpose is never going to change. And that's just to love God and love people. That's why we're here, isn't it? I mean, Jesus talks about it in John 12:27. I have come to fulfill my purpose, to love God and to be a sacrifice. And that's like, if that was Jesus's purpose, like, why are we overcomplicating ours and tying our purpose to doing it to a job and to career? So, but once you see that and you're able to separate this, vocational calling changes, faith calling doesn't. I liken the analogy of a vine to branch. Vine is your purpose or your faith calling, and your branches are your vocation. And a healthy vine produces many branches, does it not? So think about vocation in that respect. Vocations can be seasonal. God can be calling you vocationally to something for a couple of seasons. God, can be asking you to branch out and try new things. You're not just one-dimensional. You're not one thing for the rest of your life. And guess what? Those inherent talents and gifts that you're good at, that you love, that other people notice you're good at and you love, God can use those on like a lot of different branches. But you just can't get so tied to the doing. You have to stay connected to the vine and remembering it's all rooted in loving God and loving people. And once you accept that, God can use you in so many different ways.
And it really gives permission to people who I think put a lot of pressure on this idea of calling, like, I have to find my one dream job, my one career path, to say, because I agree with you. I would say all of our faith calling is to love God and love people. And that Jesus was clear on that. So really any vocation can work towards that. And typically, I'll speak for myself, I tend to think of certain career paths as being more obviously wired that way. But truly, any job, anything we do with our hands, any way that we spend our time, when looked at through the lens of how can I love God better and how can I love people better through this, any vocation offers opportunity to do that. And so it takes this hierarchy almost that we put in culturally, but also within church culture, on certain jobs being more important or having higher value than others. And it gets back to the core of, we're all valued, as you said, what am I valued for apart from my job? That we're all valued because we're image bearers that are doing our best to love God and love others in all these arenas of our lives. Our vocation is one of them. And vocation is just the way that God has uniquely equipped each of us
with our talents and gifts he's placed us there in that moment, in that season, to love God and love people. Like, I feel like God had me at the View to uniquely love Joy Behar and love Whoopi Goldberg, you know, to show them a difference in me. And it takes the pressure off. Like you said, it takes the pressure off, like what you're doing, and you're just remembering who you're doing it for. You are image bearers of Christ. And also, like, some people don't need to make a big vocational shift, but they just need a paradigm shift. They need to maybe enjoy work a little bit more and just see it for what it is, that this is where God has me. This is how I'm expressing my love. You know, Jesus' love to people is in this space, and it doesn't have to be for the rest of your life. I remember seasons working 3 jobs at Arby's, cleaning apartments, and working in video production, like simultaneously. Like, that was a season. That wasn't, you know, the rest of my life. You know, if I would have seen myself very one-dimensionally, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna be, you know, selling Arby's roast beef sandwiches for the rest of my life and cleaning apartments. You know, God can call us vocationally to different things in different seasons, but always remember, like, he's placed us there. He's going to use our unique talents and gifts, but he's placed us there to love God and love people. That's our purpose. But we always bring the purpose back to us. Oh, what is it about me? I have to do, you know, I have to do this one thing that I was called to do. But you don't have, there wasn't just one thing that God has vocationally called you to do. There's one thing he did ask you to do, and that is to love people and love God, you know. But when it comes to doing, we put all our eggs in this doing basket, and then we just set ourselves up for colossal failure, because when that shift happens, we don't know who we are outside of it.
It sounds like this transition for you has added so much actually to your voice. I mean, even the things that you're saying now have come through that process. And so God is actually building your voice through
100%.
You know, your experiences. So how have you felt that even within your own spirit? And then how have you found that your communication to the world looks a little differently now?
Yeah, I think he's definitely been building my voice. You know, when I was first writing this book, I didn't want to write a book just to write a book. I wanted to write a book because I had something to say. And because of the nature of what I do for a living, publishers had approached me for probably the last 10 years to write a book. And I said, I don't have anything to say. Why would I write a book? But I wrote this book because I feel like God gave me this message that he wants me to share with people, to release them, to give them permission to see themselves outside of what they do, to see that there's so much more than that, and then to help them find a vocational lane. And it's been interesting because, you know, when we're ramping up for the book, I started to feel like these fears were creeping back in. Fears manifest in a myriad of different ways. And for me, it was like, oh my gosh, what if people hate this book? And then I was like, wait a second, nope. God asked me to do this. I'm doing it. And if it helps a couple of people, then it's worth it. But just seeing how the message has really resonated with people and given them permission, I find that there's so much for me. I'm just feeding off of that, knowing that this is empowering people. It's helping to release people, and it's equipping people, and it's giving people tools. And some people are hearing about Jesus for the first time, you know, through the book. And so I feel like God is strengthening me and giving me a stronger voice, probably a more confident voice, confident in who I am as a daughter of Christ. And that's been really great just to see, and humbling too, you know, to see how people have responded to the message, men and women and believers and unbelievers. So, but yeah, God's definitely working, and it's really exciting to see. It really is.
I think that's a part of what I love about when we are on a journey with God. He evolves our voice over time, and he takes all of that experience that we've had and that we've been through and we've grown through, and he builds it, you know, and then amplifies it in different creative ways. And I see that in your story. And I think it's really beautiful how he's amplifying it now, and it's pivoted and it's changed. And that was on purpose. You know, there's a reason for that.
Yeah. I mean, even the message of the book, like when I first put the manuscript together, like the manuscript kind of changed too, because the book was more fear centric before, like how to, being paralyzed by fear. And then when I step away, and I realize I'm not sure who I am outside of work, I'm like, gosh, I feel like so many people are in this spot where we're doing what society told us to do, especially as women. We're leaning in, we're going for that thing, what's your name? What do you do for a living? And I just, even the message of the book evolved quite a bit. And that was, just the Holy Spirit, just being open to God and being open to his path for you. We all have a vision of like how we want our life to go, but God just wants us to know that that we trust him and he wants us to obey him. It's like when Joshua circled Jericho 7 times, sometimes we're just asked to circle and circle and keep circling, even though we're like, but don't you want me to do this? Yes, I want you to do that, but I need you to circle 7 times. And there's a gift in obedience, and there's a gift in being refined. And I'm finding that out right now. It's really been, God's just, but it's up to us. It's up to us to take that step. We have to take that first step. We got to trust. We have to push into our fear. We have to take a step of faith, and God always meets us there. And
because it's not faith if you know what's on the other side. So it is
absolutely.
faith.
No, it's not. I know. And it can be scary. Of course it can, but listen, when God is asking you to do something, he's going to show up, but we have to be bold and courageous enough. And he has given us that spirit of courage and tenacity, and fearlessness. And we just have to press into that. We do.
So good. I love it. I love it, Paula. I love your story. I love this refined voice that you're putting out in the world. And we're so thankful that you came on today, and we're really excited about your book.
Thank you. I'm excited, and thank you for letting me talk about it. And I just pray that it really helps people to find their purpose outside of doing, find, what it is they were uniquely vocationally equipped to do, and really just discover their purpose, a purpose and calling that don't shift and shake when the world does.
Yeah.
So
good.
I know like my purpose statement now is different than it was before. Before it was, I'm Paula Faris, and I'm Good Morning America and The View, and I'm here to be an amazing broadcaster. Now I'm Paula Faris, and I'm a wife, mom. I love Jesus. I'm curious. I ask questions. I challenge and champion people. And do you notice that is never going to change? It'll never change.
I love that statement so much.
And so that's come up with your purpose statement. That's never going to change. It's not tied to doing. It's tied to who you are, who you were created to be. And then the doing takes care of itself, but just anchoring in that. So
I'm cheering. I'm cheering in my spirit right now over that. That's just resonating. That is resonating so deeply with me.
Thank you. Thank you. So
okay.
I'm just praying God does his thing.
Well, thank you, Paula. And we're so excited to have you on this series of Knowing Your Voice. And your voice is beautiful.
Krista.
So appreciate it.
Thank you, Krista. Thank you, Alex. It's been a pleasure. And Krista, offline, please let me know where the tree is from. I need that in my life.
Okay. Well, actually, I was going to ask you, can we have an address we can send something to you that if you'd like to send a little note? I don't think we have it because of your publicist.
Yeah, no, for sure. Let me, I just got a P.O. box, which is awesome because it helps me. Hold on, where is it? I don't have it memorized yet, ladies. It is P.O. Box 8146.
Okay.
It's in Seneca, South Carolina, and Seneca is Seneca, and the zip code here is 29678.
Okay, I was going to ask you about some Cedarville people.
Yes, ask me about some Cedarville people, yes. What year did they graduate?
Well, Beth and Michael Hidalgo.